This video has us looking into Manhattan. This is a location I didn't really know anything about. I had a viewer tip me off, have me look into... Wait a minute, this is the wrong Manhattan. We're looking at Manhattan, Kansas. This is Manhattan, Kansas. Manhattan, New York would have been a lengthy video, probably a series of videos. Population demographics for Manhattan, Kansas. Modern day is about 50,000 people. We turn the clocks back to 1900, we're looking at 3.4K. So what you're going to see in this video is a lot of stone buildings, just like the one in the foreground there. And again, as usual, you have to wonder, where did all the labor come from and skill come from for such a small location. Manhattan, Kansas, also famous for being the location of Kansas State University, the Wildcats. There's a funny narrative too in the beginning. Apparently a steamboat ran ashore at this location, and the 70 or so people that were on the steamboat were encouraged to stay to help populate the town and create the town. This is going way back into the 1850s, and they said they would on condition that they rename the settlement Manhattan after the name of the steamboat liner. I think it was Cincinnati Manhattan steam lines. But as you'll see in this video, I would say there's much more to this story. So let's begin with a bit of geography. We have Manhattan, Kansas. You can see it sitting right here, not far from Topeka, not far from Kansas City. If we go a little bit north, we're at Omaha. These are all cities I've covered. Wichita, a little further to the south. And I think the name of the game here is limestone. Manhattan's suffering several floods. This is the flood of 1951, I believe. You can see here the very prominent bulgy limestone construction just in a regular downtown building, and this narrative is going to repeat itself as we move forward. In a local park, you can see a tower in the background hidden behind the trees, but you've got a stone bridge, certainly not looking like it's in the same state it was when it was built. Something to ponder on with the very low population demographics at that early time period. And again, we have to ask the question, where did all the labor come from and the skill? This is nearby in a place called Cowley Lake, some strange geography, if you will. Just thought I would add that in. We always start with a bit of early narrative as well. This is supposedly some of the earliest settlements, a depiction of some of the earliest settlements. They're telling us 1822 here. This is how the native people of the area lived for thousands of years, we'll be told. The Kaw Nation, K-A-W. And this is all part of the laying the groundwork for the narrative seeding, I think, and the reset, the false start of civilization here in North America. We're going to see quite a few structures from the Kansas State University. This is the agricultural building, looking like it belongs somewhere in France. I don't have a date on that. I have a couple dates for you with the population, as you can see here. Anderson Hall. This one built in 1879, very early time period. There's only about 2,000 people living there, but they have the gumption to construct this type of building, looking very old in this early postcard here, covered in all sorts of creeping vines. And it does still stand, so we get a bit of a taste of what they look like. You can see here, you've got some tapering of the stone, very skilled stonework going on here, very large blocks, very labor-intensive work. This is just a look at the front. Remember 1879, they're building this. Check out the tapered tower as we move toward the top. And I'm not sure if they're going to tell us this is smooth stone or if there's some form of concrete work going on here. These are always things to watch out for when you're looking at some of these early buildings. The old auditorium, limestone, why not? There it is again. I didn't find a lot of photographs. A lot of these will be in postcard form for you. But I think you still get the point with this style of architecture. The Calvin Hall, part of the university, still stands there. It is in the modern day, looking quite pristine. There's a little bit of damage going on in some of the front pillars here, but looking impeccable. Many of these, they'll say, were built in the early 1900s as well. Very low populations, though, not in double digits, in the thousands, really in the first decade of the 20th century. Here's an overview of what they expect us to think the college grounds looked like early on. Quite prominent again, very low populations. You have to think they mustered some sort of force to get this thing built, agricultural college. They have an engineering building, which I believe no longer stands. I couldn't find any modern photographs of it. But again, you can tell that this is all built with stone. Horticultural hall. You almost think this could have been some sort of World's Fair, but it was designated as a university. Just a look at some of the geography, the nearby geography. Rock Island Cut. Get the gentleman standing on the rocks just to give us the effect. A lot of limestone apparently in the area, which makes sense. And of course the streetcar. Despite the low population, Manhattan, Kansas gets the streetcar, because why not? Not sure what this is supposed to be connected to. This little pole here. The dairy building gets to be made out of stone. The domestic science hall, the little turret on the corner. It's a lot of labor. And the veterinary building. And some of these do stand, like I said, some of them are long gone. The domestic science and arts building. Quite the amount of resources put into the construction of this, if we're to believe the narrative. Or are we thinking maybe that these were standing before and these had to be given a designation? It's kind of where I lean to, of course. But the ultimate goal is to provide you with the visuals and let you come to your own conclusions. Quite a few churches as well, and you get some silly postcards in here, as you'll see moving forward. The Congregational Church. The ladies' gymnasium, all covered in ivy. You can tell, though, got stone construction here. Community building showing us a little bit of brick. Sometimes I wonder with these structures that they're using the base of another structure, an earlier structure, and if they built upon that. Starting to think more and more that that's the case with a lot of these. So the Kansas State University starts out as the Bluemont Central College quite early on, 1850s. So that's an interesting, very early narrative, again, for such a small settlement. You also have explanation for the population growth, although it's quite subtle, the growth. The explanation being given that the gold rush in the Rocky Mountains in 1859 sparked population growth. Because how else would you explain the growth of such a location, I guess? The first Christian church, stone. This is a great postcard. Why on earth would you ever create a postcard where the building you're trying to feature is almost completely shrouded in leaves? And I've mentioned this before in previous videos, but I think suspicious to say the least. I don't really understand the rationale there. Why would you buy that if you want to feature that church building on your postcard? The first Christian church looks like it could have been a different designation. They designated this one a church. Could have been some sort of government municipal building, whatever it might be. Doesn't really look like a typical church structure that you would expect to see. The old Carnegie Library, Carnegie getting his paws on Manhattan, Kansas. Of course, the story goes Andrew Carnegie funds over 2,000 libraries and, of course, stocks them with books as well. All of this going on late 1800s, early 1900s, all over the place. In an effort, I think, to re-educate the population. You can see here only 4,000 people living there in 1904. This one still stands, and this is giving us a taste of the quality of construction here. Here you have a very consistent thick stone, and a thin stone, thick stone, thin stone working its way up. 2 Doric columns, I believe we call that in traditional architectural terms. They tell us when it was erected, front and center, in case you're starting to question the narrative. Yeah, I'd say there's much more to the story, as usual. The Old Catholic Church, this one's supposedly built in 1920. The population is now at 8,000. It's a bit of growth over those several decades, but not a lot of growth. Still quite a small population. This one still stands. I think it's on the National Registry of Historic Places, apparently. Sticking out like a bit of a sore thumb in Manhattan, though, with everything else seeming to be built out of limestone. Several early high schools pop up. This one, these are ghosts. These are absolute ghosts. I did try to dig a little deeper on some of these, and they just come up with nothing online. This is one of the high schools with its clock tower, and this is another high school, looking very grainy, but you get the picture. Another early high school that no longer stands. There it is in postcard form, same one. That's a lot of work for such a small location. We have a city hall that, again, is an absolute ghost. I could find no other trace of this structure here. And if we look a little closer at the street in front, and we have a bit of dirt here, but on this side, we're starting to look a little bit more like maybe we've got cobble streets as well. I would expect that. With my research, it seems to come up over and over. But very, very well built, these out of limestone. The Congregational Church peeking out from behind the trees. Of course, we have a courthouse. Only took 1 year to build this at a time when there's 4,000 people living there. I did have a comment recently on a video doing some analysis on how many children were in the home at the time. Average size family was about 5, so 3 children at the turn of the century. So population demographics have to be almost chopped down to 1,000 probably able-bodied men in this area. And how many you're going to throw on one project? And how skilled are they? What are their skills? The narrative has already fallen apart as far as I'm concerned. 1 year build. And there it stands in the modern day, looking like it could easily stand another 500 years. Almost as new as the day it was built. You have some interesting iconography here on the front as well. If we get a little closer, you can see probably part of the drainage system here, some sort of gargoyle. No doubt the water probably spills out the mouth. It's part of the drainage system. The date of the building, looking a little bit after the fact. And these heads on the corner, let's take a closer look at those, carved out of limestone. Very strange iconography on the courthouse. And did you know anything about Manhattan, Kansas? Let me know in the comment section if you have any local flavor to add to the story here. The purpose of these videos again is to archive the architecture and some of the surrounding geography in specific locations. The Fairchild Hall, part of the university there, built in 1894 when there was only about 3,000 people living there. This one still stands. Here you can see it in the modern day, looking a little bit more weathered. A little bit of that blackening going on there. But turreted corners, very prominent stone in the lower areas here. Very strange arch over the doors. Fairchild Hall or library. And this is a view taken from the back. Interesting, the postcards are colorizing some of the arches and banding, which we're not seeing on the modern structures. It's all looking like a uniform color. So you wonder if that was the case, or if this is just some sort of feature they were adding to the postcards, most likely. The First Baptist Church could have easily been the Carnegie Library. And again, not looking like a church, looking like it could be a government-type building. I have it also in black and white, with the suited gentleman in the foreground, and a very strange construction, again, for a Baptist church. We've seen some strange Baptist churches, especially in the South, places like Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, all have strange domed Baptist churches that could easily have been designated government buildings. The First Methodist Church is the only trace I could find of this one. There's that high school again. We saw that earlier. Again, the vines, very prominent vines, looking like all of this has been growing. This has been around for much longer than we're being told. The Hotel Gillett. There's a couple versions of this one. So you have the very nice looking street lights and the sidewalks. So you have one in the street car tracks here in the corner. So you have to assume that there's some cobbled streets going on here. And this is supposedly an earlier version of the Hotel Gillett. So you never know what to make of those. This is the Hotel Wareham. During that flood, you can see here. Quite a devastating flood. And there it is in all its glory. Just a nearby structure. Always the limestone. And we get the usual suspects in the area. This is the Rebecca's, affiliated with the Oddfellows, having their home, country home. That would be the sister organization I've mentioned in previous videos, recent previous videos. We also have an Oddfellows home for the gentlemen, or is it for the children? We know that the repopulation agenda was in full force in the late 1800s, and I would suspect that that's probably what's going on here. I added this one, the Marshall Building, probably a new construction, but showing us the streetcar tracks and the infrastructure well intact, so worthy of inclusion. This is the Masonic Temple, looking like it could have been the Carnegie Library again. Many of these structures, and you can take a look at the stonework here and how perfect a lot of the stonework really is. Okay, this is one of my favorites in Manhattan, the Memorial Stadium. This one's supposedly built in 1922, so the photograph is coming from the early 30s. And as you can see, you've got basically two stone structures with the turrets on the corners, and then you have the seating area. I do have an earlier postcard of that as well, and what that shows us is an entire section here on the front with two more turrets and an arched entry, looking very castle-like. Not sure when this was supposed to have been dated at, but if this was built in 1922, and this photograph is from 1931, you basically got 9 years before they decide to remove this portion. Why on earth they would want to remove this portion with the extra seating, making very little sense to me. You can see it's not there or over here. So something stinks about this. Again, this is par for the course. We see a lot of these being scaled down very early on in their existence, and this is just another case of that going on. Makes you wonder, is this much older? We'll move on to the Nichols Gymnasium. Built in 1911, it only took a year to build. Population at the time 6,000 people. Again, looking very much like a castle. Here's an overview of it, looking quite gutted. And I think it does still stand, so they must have done some renovation work on it, but looking again very old. So got some circular windows in here, very bulgy looking limestone. You've also got the stone walls in the foreground, and a closer look reveals the age of this structure. Built really only 110 years old. This again, if this were somewhere in Europe, they would tell us that this was 900 years old. But not in Manhattan, Kansas. We have the Union Station here. We'll take a closer look at that moving forward. Not a huge train station. This is Teddy Roosevelt, apparently addressing a crowd at the college in 1903. Good old Teddy. The Physical Science Building, I believe we saw this earlier. I looked for a date on construction of this one, but I could not find it. And again, the Physical Science Hall, I don't know, probably a different structure, definitely a different structure. So you have to wonder again about, did these coexist? Did they change the designation, expand it? You have the railing here indicating a lower area below, which they don't want people to fall down into. The Horticultural Hall, again, we may have seen this one as well. Try not to double up. And in the Presbyterian Church, another church looking like it's not a church. Very strange, very run down looking around it as well, not very well maintained. There's a dam nearby too, the Rocky Ford Dam. A lot of this, I think, is part of the infrastructure of the old world. A lot of it damaged, repurposed, a lot of it gets concreted over. Something to watch for if you're exploring old dams, if we're looking at a concrete topping over top of a stone base layer. You can see the stonework here on the sides, locals fishing. All things to think about if you're going to do any exploration on your own. Just another look at the university buildings. We also have a bank, the Union National Bank, made out of stone. I guess you're sensing a theme here, like I mentioned at the beginning. Limestone. This is the limestone city or town. And this is the bank in the modern day. Again, you can see what they do to these things. Let's go back. And then they take off the ornamentation here, flatten the top, so as not to catch your eye. They've also taken the arched entryway out of here, and they've just squared it off. Why would they do that, you might ask? They always have a weak explanation for it, but I think, again, this is part of the scalping, as I had someone recently say in a comment, the scalping of the old world architecture. The Union Pacific Depot, there it is. A cute looking building, cute looking old worlder. Obviously not a hub of the old world, Manhattan, but I think there's, again, much more to the story. Also looking like maybe the facade has changed from then till now. Not sure though, hard to make out in the black and white. And just a little taste again of some of the university before we close out the video. No, we're not in France. No, this is not 600 years old. This is in Manhattan, Kansas. And we have a stone wall. And you can see here, and I mentioned in my last video on Texas courthouses, I mentioned the WPA, Workers' Progress Administration, part of the New Deal, came about as a result of Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt, where I think there was much more going on. This is not just to spark the economy, but it was to erase much of what once was, cover up all the rest of it, and you can see making its presence here in Manhattan, Kansas as well. The Wareham Theater. There's a courthouse in the background. Strange looking building here, looking like it's almost been, I don't know, something's been doctored. This is looking far too low. You have even the archway coming up above the roof line, almost like there should be something bigger on top that's been removed, and then the courthouse has sort of just been placed in there. Always makes me wonder what they're doing to these old photographs, but we know that they had the technology to do a lot of doctoring. And as I often do in my videos, we will finish this one on the YMCA. And I'm thinking a lot more along the lines these days that the YMCAs were linked closely with the repopulation agenda, the orphan asylums. Were these people being sent out into the world when they came of age, and did they use a lot of these YMCAs as stepping stones before they could get their feet on the ground and get settled in civilization? Well, that's the file on Manhattan, Kansas. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I appreciate you watching. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.